terrorists fired at an employee in a government office in Jammu and Kashmir's Budgam district. The victim, a Kashmiri Pandit, sustained several injuries before he was rushed to a hospital where he died later. Members of the Kashmiri Pandit community took to the streets across various parts of the Union territory in order to register their protest. Here's a report.
A targeted terror attack on a Kashmiri Pandit in Jammu and Kashmir's Budgam. Rahul Bhatt, a state government officer, was shot at point-blank range in his office. Rushed to hospital, Bhatt died of gunshot injuries.
And now the family is in deep mourning. They are saying that the situation in the Kashmir Valley is not conducive for the survival of the Kashmiri Pandits. They are saying that the government has totally failed to provide security and to infuse confidence among the minuscule minority Kashmiri Pandit community. They are saying that the government must take tough action against terrorists in the Kashmir Valley.
हमारा घर ही खत्म हो गया, खानदान ही खत्म हो गया. अब क्या बोले हम? ये तो सब वही पोजीशन है. 90 में तो हम जान बचाकर आ गए थे यहाँ. बड़ी गलती की जो हम अपने बच्चों को वहाँ बेच रहे हैं और वहाँ लाशें आती है. क्योंकि वहाँ मिलिटेंसी का माहौल है, वो चुन-चुन कर अब मार रहे हैं.
Angry Kashmiri Pandits blocked the Srinagar-Jammu highway at Vesu-Qazigund, demanding justice for Rahul. Jammu and Kashmir BJP blamed Pakistan-backed terrorists for the killing.
इन कायर आतंकवादियों को जमीन के पाताल से भी निकालकर इनको मौत के घाट उतारेंगे. पाकिस्तान ने हमेशा कश्मीर को और कश्मीरियों को बर्बाद किया है.
Former Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah urged the government to take action, even as Congress blamed the administration for not protecting Kashmiri Pandits.
जितने भी हमारे वहाँ ये जो माइनॉरिटी के एम्प्लॉइज हैं उनको भी बहुत डर लग गया होगा. तो लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर साहब को फौरन जम्मू से श्रीनगर जाना चाहिए और वहाँ पे इन लोगों की उम्मीद दिलानी चाहिए कि कुछ हम लोग आपके पूरा एहतियात खबरदार और ख्याल रखेंगे. बार बार कहते हैं सरकार कि यहाँ सब स्थिति ठीक है. अब आप देखिए खुद ही कि गवर्नमेंट दफ्तर में घुस के वो अगर उसको मार सकते हैं तो स्थिति कहाँ ठीक है.
Rahul Bhatt is the latest victim of attacks pinpointed on Kashmiri Pandits. Deepak Chand was killed by terrorists at a school in Srinagar on October 7, 2021. A few days before that, Makhan Lal Bindru, a popular chemist in Srinagar, was shot dead on October 5, 2021. On September 17, 2021, a constable Bantu Sharma was killed in Kulgam district. And on June 8, 2020, a Sarpanch, Ajay Pandita, alias Bharti, was gunned down in South Kashmir's Anantnag. The killings of Pandits comes as efforts are made for the return to the valley, and the administration claiming that Kashmir is safe and secure. Bureau Report, India Today.
The last rites of slain Kashmiri Pandit Rahul Bhatt took place in Jammu today. There was sloganeering against BJP Jammu and Kashmir Chief Ravinder Raina, who had reached the funeral in order to pay his last respects to Rahul Bhatt.
कश्मीरी पंडित समाज ने एक अपना होनहार नौजवान खोया है. स्वाभाविक है लोगों में बहुत गुस्सा है. जिन परिजनों ने अपने ब्लड रिलेशन में अपने रिश्तेदार को, अपने परिवार के सदस्य को खोया है, यकीनन उनको गुस्सा है. ये पाकिस्तान के जो कायर आतंकवादियों ने घटना की है, इसके विरुद्ध पूरे जम्मू कश्मीर में, पूरे हिंदुस्तान में गुस्सा है. इन सभी कायर पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादियों को जमीन के पाताल से निकाल कर इनको मौत के घाट उतारेंगे. किसी पाकिस्तानी को, किसी दहशतगर्द को नहीं बख्शेंगे.
32 साल से जो ये चल रहा है और 2008 के बाद जो पीएम पैकेज सरकार ने दिया था उसके अंडर दैट पैकेज बहुत सारे एम्प्लॉयज़ बिकॉज ऑफ लाइवलीहुड वहाँ पे चले गए थे, बट उनको टारगेटेड किलिंग कर दिया गया जा रहा है डे बाय डे। और जो गज़वाए हिंद और ये जो टेररिस्ट रेजिस्टेंट फोर्स जो भी अभी TRF जिसको बोलते हैं, एक एक करके उन्होंने थ्रेट दिया है कि कश्मीरी हिंदू को हम मारेंगे, यहाँ पे हम कश्मीरी हिंदू को नहीं रहने देंगे, यहाँ पे इंडिया हम बसने नहीं देंगे। तो गवर्नमेंट को इसका संज्ञान लेना चाहिए और गवर्नमेंट को पूरा सोचना चाहिए कि गवर्नमेंट ने स्केपगोट्स कैसे बना लिया कश्मीरी हिंदू को, कश्मीरी हिंदू जो कि इतनी माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी है।
Mortal remains of Kashmiri Pandit Rahul Bhatt have been brought to Jammu. Rahul Bhatt was assassinated by the terrorists in central Kashmir's Budgam district yesterday. His mortal remains have now been brought to Jammu and he will be cremated shortly. Rahul Bhatt's family had to flee Kashmir in 1990 and then they took shelter in Jammu. They lived in various parts of Jammu, but in 2010 Rahul Bhatt, as part of Prime Minister's special recruitment drive, he applied for that and he got a job in central Kashmir's Budgam district. He returned to Kashmir and he was staying in Budgam. He was working at the Tehsildar's office in Chadura. He was working honestly and dedicatedly, but terrorists targeted him and he was assassinated by the terrorists in central Kashmir's Budgam district yesterday. Here at the cremation ground, you can see that large number of people have gathered here. They are here to pay homage to the son of the soil. They are here to pay homage to Rahul Bhatt, who was a brave human being, and he had gone to Kashmir in 2010 despite the terror threats, and he was working there serving the people of the valley, but his presence was like an eyesore for the terrorists, and that is why he was targeted. The terrorists are sending out their message. They are sending out their message loud and clear that they don't want presence of the Kashmiri Pandits in the Kashmir Valley.
Four-time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been sworn in again as the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. Will this bring a temporary sort of a lull, impasse as far as the political turmoil in Sri Lanka is concerned? The people, the local citizens, of course, continue to bear the brunt of the skyrocketing prices of essential items. Meanwhile, here's the report.
A temporary relief to the political impasse in Sri Lanka. Veteran Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as a Prime Minister to try and steer the island nation out of its economic mess. A four-time Prime Minister, Ranil replaces Namal Rajapaksa, who was unceremoniously ousted earlier this week. Mahinda, blamed for creating economic turmoil, has taken refuge at the Trincomalee naval base. He and his loyalists have been barred from leaving the country. Protesters have abated after shoot-at-sight orders and strict curfew. A brief respite was given for people to buy essentials.
If you think that these vehicles have been halted because of a traffic jam, well, you're mistaken. This is the traffic, the queue for filling petrol and diesel into their vehicles. What we are seeing here in Sri Lanka is immense shortage of fuel, and vehicles have to wait for hours together to get their petrol tanks filled. We're seeing here on the pavements, two-wheelers have been parked and people have been waiting for hours together, hoping that they will be able to get at least a little bit of fuel to ensure that they can go about with their day-to-day activities. This is one of the tragic scenarios that we're seeing in Sri Lanka since this economic crisis that started.
I've been here since last night, and just a couple of minutes ago only we managed to get a fuel tank, and so unfortunate situation for Sri Lankans because we are wasting our valuable time.
Prices of fruits and vegetables have gone up and people are facing the brunt.
We're being told that cabbages are sold for around 400 rupees, which was earlier around 200. And similarly, we're being told that beans is being sold for 550 rupees, which was earlier only around 400 or 350 rupees.
பிரச்சனை வராம இருக்குமா அண்ணனடா கொண்டு போய் ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்படுறாங்களே எங்களுக்கு தொழில் பாதிச்சு எல்லாமே பாதிப்பா இருக்கு அப்ப எப்படிமா நாங்க ஜீவிக்கிறது
एवरीथिंग इज वेरी हाई पूरा सामान बहुत हाई है सामान लेने के लिए आदमी का बहुत मुश्किल है तो पूरा आदमी का इधर काम नहीं
But Lanka remains on the edge. Spiraling prices, fuel and food shortage has crippled the country. New Prime Minister Wickremesinghe has a huge task on his hands to put the country back on rails. With Akshay Nath in Colombo, Bureau Report, India Today.
Speaking exclusively to India Today, Namal Rajapaksa, the son of former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Rajapaksa, said that a president cannot be thrown out because it will deepen the political crisis in the country. He also, in fact, hit out at the opposition in the country, saying that they were not taking responsibility for governing Sri Lanka when it faced one of its worst economic crises. Listen in.
I have with me Namal Rajapaksa. Thank you for joining us, sir. It's a pleasure talking to you. Sir, we're seeing that today we have a new Prime Minister in place, Ranil Wickremesinghe. What do you want to tell at this point of time, sir?
So I think all the parties should come together for a common agenda, that is to come out of this crisis. And I believe, political parties are formed with different visions and different views and policies. But I think if members of those parties with understanding can come together with the Prime Minister and the new government to face these challenges, that is what Sri Lanka needs at the moment.
So we're seeing that there has been a lot of backlash on the Rajapaksa family, even at Goldface. Even now we're seeing demand for the resignation of the president. What kind of a message do you want to tell to those people, sir?
Simply we need to come out of the crisis, and as we saw, they wanted the Prime Minister to resign, and he resigned, and at the same time there were a lot of chaotic incidents that took place in the country by political motivated groups, and I'm telling you with a lot of authority, and I'm telling you with a lot of confidence that those mobs were backed by certain political parties and their members. So, and the country went without a government for 24 hours, so governing than 24 hours, and today only finally President was able to appoint a Prime Minister. So President resigning will not answer any of the questions that have been raised by the protesters or Sri Lankans. So there is a democratic way of transferring power in any country. So we believe the way forward is a democratic way. Now the President has decided to go with Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Premier and form the government, and also introduce the 21st Amendment, reducing presidential powers, even going up to the extension of abolishing executive powers. So I think the process is clear. So now we need to follow the democratic process of reducing president's power. And at the same time, as a country, as politicians, we all need to get together and face the worst economic crisis Sri Lanka has faced in our history.